We now have a special final section during which you will engage in a fireside conversation with Jeremy Harmer. With many years of experience as a teacher, trainer, author, and thought leader, Jeremy will talk about how ELT is evolving and the key principles that always make it work. The conversation will explore practical classroom strategies, the balance between innovation and pedagogy, and the changing role of the English teacher in a rapidly transforming educational environment. Jeremy will also share insights on teacher development, learner engagement, and how educators can remain reflective, resilient, and inspired in their practice. Please.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all feeling energized after this uplifting ELT quiz that we've just had. And thank you very much, Lilith, once again. That was amazing. Welcome to our conversation session with Jeremy Harmer, during which we're going to have a more informal discussion about the past, present, and future of ELT. Before we start, let me quickly explain how this is going to be organized. So you can use the QR codes that you can see displayed on the two screens on both sides of the hall. Feel free to submit your questions during, throughout our conversation, actually, because I'm going to keep an eye on them. I have them all here on my screen. Good news, all the questions are anonymous. So feel free to ask whatever you feel like asking. And then I'll select a few for Jeremy to answer later on. Right? I'll just give you a minute to make sure that the QR codes work for you. All right. So, Mr. Harmer, first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity. It's a pleasure and, of course, an honor for me to be sitting next to a legend. So thank you. Thank you. I'm really, it's my pleasure to be hosting this session. I can still remember your visit to Armenia back in 2017, yes, where you gave this inspirational speech, during which you posed a very provocative question: does ELT have a future? That was your question, not mine. So, reflecting on the past two days and all the sessions that we've and all the speakers that we heard, and also your two plenary sessions, but your two plenary sessions actually challenged our perspectives on where ELT is headed at the moment. And I'd like you to look back at your own first steps in the classroom. Any expert starts as a novice. Like thinking back about your first steps in the profession, what or who motivated you to take the first steps into teaching English or teacher training?
Well, that's quite a thing. By the way, thank you very much for inviting me to do this. Can I just say before we go on, I've had the most wonderful 2 days, for which many thanks to you, Ade, for this wonderful, yes, I think there's some applause for this wonderful man, I think. But more than anything else, I just wanted to say that you're asking about inspiration. Well, the group of people in this hall yesterday and today have been absolutely wonderful, don't you think? I mean, just the most terrific atmosphere, participation, generosity, and everything else like that. I've absolutely loved it. So many, many thanks to all of you. What got me into the profession and then what inspired me? Well, I got into the profession by accident. It may not be a surprise to you that at the time I was trying to make a living as a singer-songwriter. And unfortunately, I couldn't find anyone who had the same extremely high opinion of my amazing talent as I did. I went to all the record companies, I took my tapes. They were things, it doesn't matter, they were things we had. I took my tapes, I said, you must, I'm amazing. But it didn't quite happen. So I ended up singing on the street and doing that kind of thing. And then a friend of mine, and I feel guilty to tell this to you, a friend of mine who also had a guitar, and I remember that his name was Alan, and I can remember his guitar because that was important. He said, there is this place you can go and do a course, and if you do well, you can work anywhere in the world. And without any special interest, I thought, well, I'll give that a go, like many young people do. Some of your children know exactly what they want to do, some don't. So I went along to this course. And at the beginning, it was just kind of sheer terror, because on the very first day, they made you stand up in front of real students and teach them something. And it was just awful. But the most amazing thing happened to me. And I've talked to some of my generation of colleagues who went through the same route. Sometime around the second week, it gradually dawned on me that I liked this. And the other thing that happened is it quite liked me. It just seemed to be a match for the kind of way I behaved, mostly, and the kind of person I was, and the kind of thing I was being asked to do. And I just found it, so from terror to absolute wow. And so by the time the course finished, I was absolutely committed. They wouldn't give me a job because I was told that this has always been one of my best memories. My tutor said, well, you're very good, but you're too lazy to get anywhere in this profession. And every night I've seen her since, and I remind her of that, and she went, oh, sorry. Anyway, so I didn't get a job, but I did get a girlfriend. Now, what happened then, my girlfriend got a job straight away, which was very, very upsetting. So I would come, she was a brand new girlfriend, so this was all very like this, you know. So I used to go and meet her at the end of the day, and I'd sit in the staff room and wait for her. And one evening, I was sitting there, and a man came in, the evening director of studies, and he was in a terrible kind of, he said, oh, you did the teacher's course, didn't you? I said, yes. He said, what are you doing on Monday? I said, nothing, you're teaching. And that's how I started in my career. I also married the girlfriend, and we have two beautiful daughters. I unmarried her many years later, but that's a different story and not at all important. So basically, I'll shut up now. Basically, accident, but almost instant kind of love. And here we are.
Speaking of music, I absolutely love the idea of bonding over music and through music. And I think it's a beautiful metaphor for harmonizing our approach to better support learners, and why not each other as teachers, because we need that support too, right? So you've always moved away or encouraged us to see language teaching or language in general more as a well, as an experience rather than a set of rules or drills. Now, how has this shaped your philosophy in teaching?
Gosh, that's quite a big question,
Yeah.
isn't it? Look. To be absolutely clear, I don't know what your passion is. I mean, of course, my passion is language teaching. I've just explained, and I love writing about it. I love training teachers. I love working with teachers. But another passion of mine is music. But someone this afternoon was talking about games, or this morning, talking about games because they really like games. That's a really good passion. There was an Austrian teacher I know called Stefan, I think, who teaches in Vienna. And he's a great cook. So he got his kids actually cooking. And he got them to cook English meals. Now, this isn't the same for everybody. You can't all do that. But I just love the fact that for him it was life experience which brought him and his kids together. There was a teacher in Colombia who he loved doing drama and things like that. And so he got his kids to make a horror movie. I don't know where he got permission from the head teacher and the parents to keep the kids out all night and make a sort of, this was in the time of Blair Witch, to make a kind of Blair Witch horror movie, which is, that was his thing. And what happened? Language learning stopped being the third conditional and became something powerful as a human activity. And it's not language teaching. My eldest granddaughter is now 10, and I wasn't there, but during half term recently, they filmed a little drama in a park, and she absolutely, apparently, loved it. A human experience, creative human experience. It almost doesn't matter what you choose, don't you think? It's when language teaching becomes something more than teaching language, even though what we're doing is teaching language. But we're also a bunch of human beings in the room, and that's what you have to work with. And we were talking earlier with Margaret, I think it was, about the singing this morning. Why do I like singing? Well, for me, it's because it brings me joy. And I think singing together brings people joy. But I repeat, that's what, to use that terrible expression, that's what floats my boat. What floats your boat? And my suggestion is that if you can bring that into your teaching in some way, perfect.
So all we need is passion.
Yes, I think so. And, or just engagement with life. That's the thing.
I have a question from the audience. Yeah. How did you build your career as a worldwide conference speaker?
Another accident, really. So the best experience I had in my life, really, was after fairly soon in my career. I went to Mexico. I mentioned Mexico yesterday, and every time I mention Mexico, I go, Mexico querido, lindo y querido, si muero fuera de ti. I get terribly excited about it. Anyway, I went to Mexico and was plunged into a really tough timetable. Teaching in a foreign country where, when I arrived, I didn't speak the language at all. Classes of 30 students, class after class after class, and you taught for the morning shift, and then you had a siesta, and then you taught until 9 or 10 at night. It was, it was tough, but I was young. Oh, and a lot of driving in Mexico City, which was, but you don't, and we didn't have air conditioning or anything stupid like that. But and if I did it now, I'd find it really difficult. But I was 24 or something, 25. Anyway, I worked in Mexico. What was the question?
How did you build your career?
The building. So the building, it happens, doesn't it, incrementally. I think it's up to how much you want to engage, how much time you've got, how much kind of insatiable, I keep repeating Ade's word from the very first day, how much curiosity you've got. So I just used to enjoy it, and I used to enjoy doing all these crazy things. And then someone they came up with this idea of a conference called Mex di Sol. I went to the second ever one, just I don't know, about 120 people or something. We went to a place called Tampico. That's what it was called. And I did a talk. Guess what I used as my prop in my talk in 1970 something? I'll give you one guess. 6 strings. A guitar, of course it had a guitar. So my life hasn't changed at all. Anyway, so that, and so you get going. And then in one of the branches where I worked, the director said, look, because he saw that I was keen and involved and engaged, he said, look, we need some help with teacher training. Obviously not training the teachers, but we need some help with observation or something like that. Will you come along and help? I can't pay you. And of course I said yes. And in one stroke, he changed my life, that man. A man called Richard, who I haven't seen for some time, but I dearly love him. He's one of the best professionals I've worked with, Richard Rosner. Because what he did for me is he switched this kind of love and engagement with teaching into not just a thing I did, but a thing I thought about as well. Because the moment you start trying to explain to other teachers what you do, it sort of changes everything. It means you don't just do it, you have to think about why and how and what's going on. And that began that. And then as a result of that, a publisher asked me whether I'd like to write something, so I wrote something. So then they said, would I like to give a talk? oh, yeah. So I gave a talk. And then I started giving talks. And at the beginning, like everybody, 10 people would come. Or once I flew from, by the time I got back to England, I flew from London to Lille in France. And do you know how many people came to that talk? 0. You know, and I've talked to teachers who prepared, and almost nobody comes. So at the beginning of your career as a speaker, that's what happens. And everyone, whether you're the plenary speaker or a workshop speaker, we all get nervous. We all give the same preparation time. We all do it. Sometimes the magic works and the room is full and they love you. And sometimes there's nobody there, or 1 or 2. And then you have to try and deal with that and try not to cry, essentially. But it's part of the sort of the experience of learning how to, we have that expression in learning how to roll with it, learning how to cope with it. And then gradually you start doing more talks. And then I remember the publisher in England, and by this time I'd published the first ever edition of the Practice of English Language Teaching, or some book, I don't know. And they said, would I go to Argentina? I mean, Argentina, it's a long flight. It's a long way away. Yeah, I'd love to go. I can speak Spanish. Of course, I arrived in Argentina and I couldn't speak a word of Spanish. They have a really strange accent there. No, that's not true. They would say that everyone else has a really strange accent. But anyway, that's not the point. And there I was suddenly facing an audience of about 250 people. And, you know, you literally, you want to go to the toilet a lot. But you do it and you get lost in the topic. And it worked. And then another one, and they worked. And then gradually, you know, people start saying, oh, I think the greatest thing you can develop is reliability. Well, he may not be that good, but he's pretty reliable. And then as that happens, you start being invited to give more talks. And of course, if you're lucky and you get a publisher who publishes your books, they want you to do talks because it reflects on them. And that's really what happened to me. A massive amount of luck, engagement, interest, and who was it who said? Was it Margaret this afternoon? The thing about the hands up if you think taking a risk which might not work is worth it, and I said, yeah, it's absolutely worth it. You go for it, take a risk. The worst that can happen is that it doesn't work. You know. That's the kind of thing. But I repeat, I've been incredibly lucky because at certain times of your life, things just fall into place. And you go, yeah! And the result of that is you get invited to come to Yerevan. Not once, but twice in your life. And when I was asked for the second time, I said yes immediately. Yes, please, next question.
So I'll modify this one a little bit. Do you ever feel like you're fed up with teaching, or maybe I'd say teaching, well, training teachers, yeah. Maybe?
Look, I'm a fake. I don't know how you feel, those of you who train and work, and I don't teach a full timetable with kids. You may have noticed. I don't teach like many of you do, doing a tough job. Would I feel as excited about my profession if I did that? I don't know. I can't answer that. I just know that for some years in Britain, I was the chair of the governors of a primary school in Cambridge. And the result of that is I visited the school a lot and went into a lot of classrooms. And I've never taught primary, but what I learned is massive admiration for those teachers, their ability to handle a bunch of 5-year-olds, 8-year-olds, have them all working productively at the same time, deal with their problems, deal with the discipline, deal with all of this kind of thing. Would I feel as enthusiastic about what I do if I did that every day of my life? I can't answer that. What I can say is that some of those teachers I met in that primary school, some of the teachers I meet around the world who do that, there's a light shining out of them. A kind of, they often look tired. And was it someone yesterday was talking about yeah, there's this, and then the kids back home, and you're tired, and you do this, and we all know what it's like. Sometimes you want to kill someone, your husband or the kids or something. Well, you often want to kill your husband, but that's another story. But you know, there are. I'm going to say it again and again and again. Penny who was here in 2019, I don't know, whenever it was, the wonderful Penny she's the one who she often talks about, it's not her original idea, the difference between a teacher with, 50 years experience and a teacher with 1 year's experience repeated 50 times. And that's such a clever sort of metaphor, because this idea of taking a risk, this idea of being curious, this idea of never thinking you know how to do it, this idea of finding, a new group, and you're terrified of the new group, God knows, but the kids are interesting in that wonderful process that as you get to know a group, they emerge as personality and different people. And the joy, the story we heard yesterday about the interpreting student who was a real terror, but in the end came round and said, your classes were wonderful. The fact that the pitfalls, the bad moments are pretty bad, but the good moments are just wonderful. And if your ego needs stroking, because I've got a story can I tell you a story? I went to New Zealand for one of these conferences, and they said to me in Auckland, in New Zealand, and a woman came to me and she said, I've been assigned to look after you, make sure you get to your room and make sure you're okay. And she was a woman older than me, not older than me now, but older than me then. And she looked a little bit, I don't know how to say this, she just looked a bit disappointed. Her face had a sort of bit of a disappointment. She was retired, but she had been a teacher for many years. But she was a lovely woman. I liked her very much. On the second night, she said, I can't come to you for the dinner tonight because I have a prior engagement. She said, I've been invited to a school reunion. I said, okay, that's fine. The next day, when I saw her, she looked 10 years younger, and she was floating on air. I swear she was floating on air. And she had a big smile on her face. And I said, hello, how was your evening? And her face she was transformed. She just said, it was wonderful. I said, what happened? She said, well, it was an 18th year high school reunion. And she said, 4 of the students came up to her and they said, at school, we were a bit frightened of you. You were very strict. But you were the best teacher we ever had. And everyone knows this about teaching. 18 years later or whatever, 10 years later, this woman had been lifted up by the knowledge that she had done something wonderful. And it's the hope that there are students in your class who even now, in 10 years, will say, you have done something wonderful, that keeps us going, because there's a chance you might do something wonderful. And there's a chance that if you don't think you can do something wonderful, well, go work in a factory. Except there aren't any jobs in factories because AI has taken them all. But anyway, you know what I mean. That's what guides us, the knowledge that there is a chance that we're actually doing something that's worth doing. It's better than bombing Iran or I don't know, whatever else. This is, you got these kids in front of you, these teenagers, these grown-ups who need something new. Maybe learning English will be the thing that lifts them up. You just think, what job can give you that potential satisfaction? But I'm not a sort of what's the word? I'm not a stupid kind of Pollyanna optimist. Teaching isn't like that. Teaching is a real pain in the, and it's tiring and it's grinding and it's why are my students treating me like this? And I go too much this and too much that and coffee. I love the coffee answer. I thought that was by far the best. I thought that was by far the best answer. By the way, of course I invented comprehensible input. No, but that's it. By the way, the comprehensible input one was a fascinating. Do you know why? because he started talking about comprehensible input, Stephen Krashen, in 1982 or something. And once in Mexico, funnily enough, with that same Richard Rosner, we were climbing a pyramid at dawn, one of the few pyramids left in a place called Cholula. The Spanish had destroyed all the pyramids just to show that the Catholic Church was better than the Aztec religion, you know, because that's what they did, the conquistadores. Anyway, there we were in the dawn, on this beautiful day, me and Richard, and we should have been absorbing the incredible atmosphere. You know what we were doing? We were arguing about Stephen bloody Krashen and about comprehensible input. Right, where were we? Sorry. I've no idea what I was talking about.
But to build on what you said earlier about teaching being so difficult.
Yes.
There is a question. What are you most bored with in ELT?
I'm trying to work out how to say this. I think I'll just say it. Exams. Now look, we test people too much. Language is not about getting test answers right. Language is not about doing tests. Language is not about any of that. Language is about communicating with people. Language is about my ability to communicate with you. Because if we didn't share this language, I wouldn't be able to say anything to you. I wouldn't know what you were like. I wouldn't know whether this meant you were happy or sad. I wouldn't know whether you were smiling or frowning. That's what language is about. Language is about, if you're lucky, language doesn't change the world, but it gives you the chance to change the world for the better. Why do I say that about tests? I've got to qualify that. Actually, preparing students for tests, you often get some of the most motivated students you ever get. It's quite exciting. We've got a test. We're going to work. We're going to try. We're going to do the best. And I'm not going to be rude about tests. I mean, IELTS, give me a break, you know. But so, but I worry, as everyone does, about the baleful effect of tests, because so much of what I believe in is sort of is concreted over by the need to pass an exam. The things I want to do in class, to give students time to breathe, to give students time to be creative, to give students time to experiment, to take their risks and everything else like that. And then along comes the great big concrete monster of the test. And it's all, so I'm not sure I'm bored by it. So that's, what am I bored by? Oh, what are you bored by? Go on, what's your list?
Tests.
Tests, yeah.
It's boring.
Grading them. Now, if AI can do all the grading, let's let AI do it. But someone was pointing out in their session today, the problem about AI doing grading is, of course, you know, if you grade someone's creative writing with AI, it's great, except that you can't have that conversation with the student. Say, what did you mean here? What are you trying to say? Etc. No, the grading. You know, when you'd much rather be sitting there with your glass of wine and watching the TV. A lot of AI can help, you know, a lot of sort of some of the planning things you're going to do, that kind of thing. That's boring. What's never boring is when you're in a class and you suddenly think, oh, wait a minute, I could go in that direction. And you get this little rush of adrenaline saying, yeah, go for it. What's boring? Trying to force students to do homework. What's boring? Parents' evenings. Oh, no, sorry. Do you have parents' evenings here? Yes. Your child's doing very well. I don't know. There are so many things that are boring. Of course there are. And you can't expect teaching to be this wonder job, because it ain't. It's awful. And you talk to someone like Sting. He was in your quiz. You talk about someone like Sting. He's a great musician. You could ask him the same question, what's boring about your job? And he'd probably say flying on aeroplanes or setting up a concert or packing up the equipment or I'm sure he's bored by what he does, even though to me it looks like paradise, you know.
Routine. Routine tasks.
Routine tasks, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you would say you have answered this question already, but I still want to ask it. As the Gen Z would put it, if you were to cancel one teaching practice, what practice would you cancel?
It's a really good question. Yes. Oh, I thought you were. That's a really good question. What teaching thing would you? What teaching practice would you ban? Do you know? Is it okay if I ask some of you to tell me what you think? What is there anything in teaching that you would ban? You'd say today there will be no more exams, error correction, homework, planning, reporting on progress, useless teachers meetings, although good teachers meetings are really good. Attendance registers, yes. Yeah. And then the kids try to fool you in the attendance about whether they're there or not there, and that kind of thing. It's things like that. I think it's your word again. It's back to routine stuff, which is just some of it has to be done, but you just can I just not do that today? Can I just walk into class and just get students doing stuff and if you like, in inverted commas, singing together or something like that? Can we just do that? And the beauty, of course, of being this sort of conference speaker thing is, and I thank you, all of you and your staff, and all of you people in the white tops and things, from the bottom of my heart. I just walk in here. You're the guys who do all the work, because without you, this thing wouldn't happen at all. And you're doing all the routine work that is just much less fun than, well, I hope it's good. Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's root. Oh, and also what I would ban is but you can't, because that's part of the reality. I'd sort of ban kids behaving badly in class, really, or things like that. You know, I'd just say, no, that's not going to happen. But of course, it's part of the deal, isn't it? It's. But there are days. There must be days when you think, what do I do? You know, this person just won't. You know, I'm saying, oh, go on, let's be nice. You know, and it just doesn't happen. And we have to come up, we have to find our own strategies. There was a woman at my daughter's school, this is anecdotal, and she would come back and she'd say, and I'd say, because this is the sort of thing you say to your kids if you're in education, who's the best teacher in the school? And she said, without hesitating for a second, she said, Mrs. Webster, the geography teacher. I said, why? What's special about her? She says, well, when the boys start behaving badly, she just looks at them and they shut up. Well, every other teacher in the world wants to kill Mrs. Webster because I don't know what magic does she have? What's her magic power? But I mean, by the way, she's dead now, but she was a lovely woman. I never saw her talk because I wasn't a secondary school student. But I just thought that was a fascinating little insight. Some people in Spanish, you say, es que tiene el don. She had the gift. She had that gift to be able to do that. The rest of us have to struggle. And if I could ban the moments when my brain is kind of whirring like this, saying, and I had a class in Cambridge, a mixed nationality class, and we had 4 Chinese students from China in the class, and 3 of them were young girls, about 17, 18, and there was one guy there who was older, wore a white cap. He worked as a cook in Cambridge, and he took these girls under his wing so that I could not reach them. And this is one of my big failures. And for the whole semester, I knew that what I should have done is said, hey, Chen, can we just have a quick word after the lesson? But if I'm honest, and this I would ban, he scared me. There was something about him as a person that actually, have you had students like that which kind of freaked you out? There was something which was just a little bit, I mean, I'm sure he was a really nice guy. What I should have done was to take him, not take him into the corridor, but after class said, can we just have a word? Is there any, how are the girls getting on? Is there a chance I'm a bit worried, blah, 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 blah? Or simpler language, because his English wasn't very good. I never had the courage to do that. And that's one, we've all got failures in our teaching which are still there. This was a few years ago. I will never forget just feeling like a failure about that. And I'd ban that. But that's not the same kind of answer.
So one last question from me. I mean, not me, really the audience, but because that builds well on what you've just said. If teachers in 2050 look back at 2026, what do you hope they'll say we got right?
You started this by saying that when I came here in 2017, I said, does ELT have a future? Isn't it interesting that quite a lot of our conversation in this conference has been essentially, does ELT have a future? Do we have a future because of AI? I've been thinking as we go on. We had IATEFL came up in your quiz. By the way, I thought that quiz was such good fun. I really did. It was so stupid, lovely, and funny, and funny. No, but it was funny, wasn't it? And good fun, and also quite informative and everything. It was one of the best ELT quizzes I've been to. I thought it was wonderful. I really did. Why did I mention it? Yes, 2026. What did we get right? What it made me think is that every time, I mean, for years now, there have been great technological shifts and bumps. Web 2, we're doomed. This is the end of us. Or when computers first came, oh my God, with computers, they're just going to learn with their computers. We had what's his name? The hole in the wall guy. You know, who do I mean? The guy from India, you know, who basically stood on the stage at IATEFL and said, so in a few years, we won't need teachers anymore. Isn't that a good thing? And I wanted to kill him. But you know, we get really scared. But then one year at IATEFL was the year when social media first really existed, first arrived. And we had Twitter. Twitter was the first thing before Elon Musk got his repulsive hands on it and stuff. And Twitter was, for a time, the most beautiful thing, even though it was very threatening. Because if we could, and WhatsApp and all these things, really scary but really wonderful. But what happened at that IATEFL conference, this was a great experience for me. A whole lot of young teachers, lots of them from places like Turkey and the States and Brazil, came to this conference. And they all had ideas about how to use these strange new things called QR codes and Twitter and grammar. It was so exciting and so young and so fresh. What are we getting right now? I'll tell you what we're getting right now, and we will look back on it, is saying the world is changing. We're all a bit scared, but look what we can do. And the sheer creativity of the teaching profession saying, you know what? No, we're not down and out. Let's see how we deal with it. Let's see where we go now. Curiosity. Let's keep going. We're going to make this better. Maybe our role will change in the next few years because of AI. But the care of human beings, the care of young human beings, the care of anyone who wants to learn, it will never change. And I think we will look back on this and say, you remember those 2 days in Yerevan? A lot of people were talking about AI, but nobody actually said, we're doomed. Everyone said, look what we could do. We can do this, we can do that. But then everyone said, yes, but we're teachers, and teachers do this. I think, and also when we look back on 2026, all you have to do is look back at some of your students who were in a mess and not doing very well. But somehow you brought them through. And somehow, by the time they left your care, they were doing okay. You can't make them have wonderful lives or get married well or become millionaires. No, that's not your job. But you can help people live well. And if you look back on that, you should feel very proud, I think, I would say.
Yeah, I hope they will also be able to thank us for maintaining this human magic in the classroom. So if we can do that, then we should all be proud of ourselves. If I have that one last question that I really want to read out, it says, when are you going to visit Armenia again? Question for Ara.
By the way, I must tell you that he'd so kindly, because I arrived at some stupid o'clock on Friday morning, and I couldn't possibly have started working because I was going, ugh. So he said, well, why don't you have a rest, and then we'll go and see. Where were we going to go? Yeah, which is very beautiful, right? And lovely, because the last time I was here, I had a wonderful visit to this city and the steps up there. I think I said, and we looked over to Mount Ararat and we saw, and it was lovely. But this time I thought I'd like to see a bit of the outside, you know? But then the weather turned up. So, I mean, I had a lovely time drinking brandy. I'm not, you know, that's quite a nice activity too. I'd love to come back because I would like to, you know, on Friday, something about, you know, this carpet factory, the different regions have this pattern, they have that pattern. The brandy, well, the grapes are grown here, and well, that's not actually Armenia, but this is done here, this is done there, and so on. And you just think, I'd love to visit all those places, you know, so I'll have to. I don't know is the answer, but as soon as possible. And we were joking about this probably in this room on or somewhere out there, saying summer, okay, just bloody summer, okay. When we can just spend, I'd love to spend a bit of time, just go see this place and see where you live and where you go when you for those of you who are city dwellers, where do you go when you want to get out the city? What is it, you know, what countryside calls you in this country? So as soon as possible, please.
And we do hope to see you next summer
Yes.
here in the same hall. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking to you. And I think our time is up, unfortunately, but soon, summer.
One of these days.
Yes, one summer day.
One summer day.
Yes.
Because love, when it happens, is
And we will sing together.
We will sing together again. Yeah, good. Yes.
Thank you very much.